Every organisation and every service depends to some extent on services provided by other organisations. That is why the third dimension of service management is partners and suppliers. The partners and suppliers dimension encompasses an organisation's relationships with other organisations that are involved in the design, development, deployment, delivery, support, and/or continual improvement of services. It also incorporates contracts and other agreements between the organisation and its partners. The relationships between organisations may involve various levels of integration and formality. This ranges from formal contracts with clear separation of responsibilities to flexible partnerships where parties share common goals and risks and collaborate to achieve desired outcomes. Some examples are shown on the slide. Note that the form of cooperation described are not fixed but exist as a spectrum. So you can see 3 examples in the slide. Form of cooperation, goods supply. The responsibility for the outputs is the supplier. The responsibility for achievement of the outcomes is the customer. The level of formality, formal supply, contracts and invoices. An example might be procurement of computers and phones. Form of cooperation, service delivery. Responsibility for the outputs, provider. Responsibility for achievement of the outcomes, customer. Level of formality, formal agreements and flexible cases. Possible example, cloud computing, infrastructure or platform as a service. And the last example, service partnership as the form of cooperation. Responsibility for the outputs shared between the provider and the customer. Responsibility for achievement of the outcomes shared between the provider and the customer. Level of formality, shared goals, generic agreements, flexible case-based arrangements. An example would be employee onboarding, shared between HR, facilities and IT. One method an organisation may use to address the partners and suppliers dimension is service integration and management, or SIAM. This involves the use of a specially established integrator to ensure that service relationships are properly coordinated. Service integration and management may be kept within the organisation, but can also be delegated to a trusted partner. Factors that may influence an organisation's strategy when using suppliers include strategic focus. Some organisations may prefer to focus on their core competency and to outsource non-core supporting functions to third parties. Others may prefer to stay as self-sufficient as possible, retaining full control over all important functions. Corporate culture. Some organisations have a historical preference for one approach over another. Long-standing cultural bias is difficult to change without compelling reasons. Resource scarcity. If a required resource or skill set is in short supply, it may be difficult for the service provider to acquire what is needed without engaging a supplier. Cost concerns. A decision may be influenced by whether the service provider believes that it is more economical to source a particular requirement from a supplier. Subject matter expertise. The service provider may believe that it is less risky to use a supplier that already has expertise in a required area, rather than trying to develop and maintain the subject matter expertise in-house. External constraints. Government regulation or policy, industry codes of conduct, and social, political or legal constraints may impact an organisation's supplier strategy. Demand patterns. Customer activity or demand for services may be seasonal or demonstrate high degrees of variability. These patterns may impact the extent to which organisations use external service providers to cope with variable demand.